This week's Torah portion, Vayetze, we learn two very interesting and important spiritual ideas that we can bring into our own personal lives. Shalom, my friends. This is Akiva Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, want to keep the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. This Torah portion is very interesting in that it's an entire story. It has a beginning, a middle, an end, and it is one complete story, as opposed to most other Torah portions. We have like a few different stories happening in the Torah portion, maybe half a story, and then other things. This is one complete story from beginning to end, and that story is the story of Jacob, leaving the land of Israel, going to Haran, where Avram came from, his grandfather, looking for a wife, having kids there, and then leaving there and coming back to the land of Israel. It's one complete story, which again is a very unique thing to see in one Torah portion. Why was Jacob sent there? Because just like Abraham didn't want Isaac, his son, to marry from the daughters of the land of Canaan because he knew that they were very, very immoral. So too, Rebekah, Jacob's mother, didn't want her son Jacob to marry from the daughters of Canaan. She told that to her husband Isaac, who knew that from his father. And together they sent Jacob to leave the land of Israel, which is not an easy thing, something that Isaac actually never did in his lifetime, to go back to Haran, where Avram came from, and find himself a wife and then come back. Well, it took a lot longer than he thought. Well, actually, he found his wife very, very quickly. He met Rachel, immediately upon getting there to the watering well and wanted to marry her. But as you might know, her father Lavan tricked Jacob and gave Jacob Leah instead as a wife. He worked for Leah for 7 years, and then he worked for Rachel for another 7 years, and then he worked on top of that another 6 or 7 years for the flock. He was there for about 21 years before he came back to the land of Israel. And in that time, he had most of his children, all but pretty much one. And so what can we learn from this story? That's like the simple kind of, level of the story. But we learned two interesting things. One, we're told at the beginning of the Torah portion that Jacob left Be'er Sheva, the city of Be'er Sheva, to go to the land of, or the city of Haran. We already knew that. We knew that from last week's Torah portion. So why did the Torah have to repeat that? So a very famous Torah commentator, Rashi, as he is known from 1,000 years ago in France, he comments and says, even though we already knew that, the Torah repeats that to teach us that when a righteous person like Jacob leaves a place, there's something missing from that place, so to speak. Okay, and the flip side of that, right? What's the missing piece? Is that the place, the city just lost a righteous person, right? It's a good thing to have a righteous person in the town, in the city. But on the flip side, on the more positive side, it's also to show the impact that a righteous person has on the place that he or she leaves, right? That you're leaving something behind, so to speak. And that was Jacob, and that's righteous people in general, that when they live in a place, they're not just living there, right? But they're investing in the place, they're influencing the place, they're bringing a positive impact to the place. So that when they do leave, so while they're physically not there anymore, they're still there on some level because their influence is there. What they did there when they were living there is still continuing, right? They've left that kind of imprint on the place. And that's the power of a righteous person and living righteously and living with this kind of attitude and perspective. Okay, what can I do here? How can I influence positively this place, this town, the people around me, right? In a way that will, help improve the world. And again, that's what Jacob did, and that's what the Torah to tell us, or chose to tell us, that he left Be'er Sheva, even though we already knew that, to say that when he left Be'er Sheva, right, he left that impact, he left that imprint. And of course, as with all things that we learn in the Torah, these are not just stories; these are teachings for us to learn and to take into our own lives, to internalize, right? So that maybe we're not on the same level of holiness as Jacob and the other patriarchs and matriarchs, but we too can live our lives in the places that we are in a way that looks around and say, "Hey, what can I do? How can I make a difference? How can I leave an impact here?" Right? So that's teaching number one from this Torah portion. Teaching number two is that yet again we see another matriarch, this time Rachel, just like Sarah, just like Rebecca, having trouble getting pregnant. right? Having trouble getting pregnant. It's this theme in the early generations of the Israelites and the Jewish people. And eventually, Jacob prays and she prays, and eventually, God answers her prayers, and she gets pregnant and is able to have two children, two of the 12 tribes for her husband Jacob. But it comes through prayer, right? So we see in the first three generations of the Israelite people, of the Jewish people, Sarah to Rebecca to Rachel, that prayer and birth are deeply connected. That they all needed to pray so deeply for so long, right? Different lengths of time for each one, right? Sarah the most, and until their prayers were answered, until they were able to have a child or children. So what's the teaching there for us, right? I think what we can take from this is that anytime we're trying to birth something into the world, anytime that we're trying to bring something new into the world, something that hasn't been yet, right? We should, we're encouraged to. It would be helpful if we did attach prayer to it, right? Put our best into it, do all the work, do all the effort, all the things that need to get done in order to bring this thing out into the world, to birth, so to speak, this new idea, this new thing in the world, or new version of something that's already been in the world. But to pray as well. Know that it's not all in our hands. Right? That yes, everything that is in our hands, we have to do. We have to do our best. Keep going, not giving up. At the same time, attach prayer to it, right? With the spiritual recognition that it's not all from us, that there's something higher than us, there's something beyond us and above us, right? That is really, controlling everything and could help. And when we call out in prayer, we're able to bring in that divine assistance, that divine guidance, and let's be honest, increase our chances of actually birthing that thing into the world. So it's attaching our own actions with the spiritual dimension as well, with the recognition that it's not all us, but what I can do, I will do. And also, bring in the spiritual dimension, the dimension of prayer into this as well, to humble myself, but also encourage myself, right? That this could be done, that this is possible, with divine assistance, right? It will happen. So those are two spiritual teachings from this week's Torah portion. All the best, my friends, and be well.